I live in Vermont. I'm 70 years old and certainly ashamed of what's happened to me. My husband passed away 2 years ago. A heart attack, suddenly, and needless to say, it left me feeling alone. I don't think I've processed the grief properly. Everything happened quickly, from his death to burial to cleaning the house to the silence. I found myself sitting on the phone more and more, scrolling through TikTok. I subscribe to tons of cooking, chef-inspired TikTokers. My granddaughter got me hooked on TikTok as she's 15, and she's on there all the time. She thought it would be good entertainment for me, and indeed it was, and it still is. I created a profile on there a year ago. Mostly subscribed to others, and I had uploaded 2 short videos of myself in the kitchen. I love to cook. I made quick casseroles, and while I had some views, I certainly was not a cooking star of TikTok. A man named Barry started to follow me. I got a notification, and when he did, I checked his profile. He looked to be maybe in his 60s with a white beard. I have a few random people follow me, so it wasn't unusual, but I always check out people who do subscribe. He had a couple videos, and they were just pictures put together with music. Pretty soon, I had a message from him introducing himself in TikTok Messenger. He said he was 67 years old, a widow, and came to TikTok for entertainment. We struck up a conversation on there. He told me his wife died from liver cancer 2 years ago, nearly to the date that my husband died from his heart attack. I found it eerie, but a common ground connection. He said she was very sick for over a year and he took care of her. They had been married for 38 years, and my husband and I were married a few years more than that. We made it to our 42nd anniversary. We had 3 sons and a daughter, and I have 5 grandchildren. Barry said he only had the one son who was in the army, so he didn't see him often as his son was in Syria on deployment. Barry said he was an engineer doing contract work, and he was semi-retired but still did occasional contracts. In fact, he was getting ready to travel to Ghana as an advisor on an oil contract to oversee some construction. I thought it was a bit odd for a man of his age to be traveling like that. I told Barry that I'd been to East Africa back in the 1980s on a missionary trip through my church, and that my husband and I had helped feed and bring water to the poor there. He said that it was nice I did God's work, and then told me that his contract was in Ghana and that he didn't want to go. He started bad-mouthing the people there. And I was a little offended by this, as I think people are good and bad in all nations. He told me it would be his last contract. He said he was going to retire finally and hoped to find a woman to spend the rest of his life with. I let him know I wasn't looking to get married again. I had already had my fairy tale, but wouldn't mind chatting to him and being his friend. Barry asked me if I had Facebook, to which I did. He then asked me if we could add each other and asked for my profile link. Well, I didn't know how to get my profile link, so I gave him a description of my profile photo in the city that I lived in. Within minutes, he sent me a friend request. His profile was pretty empty. He told me he created it recently, but his company doesn't like their employees to use Facebook. He then asked if I had Google Hangouts, to which I had no idea what that was. He talked me through how to download it on my phone, and we started chatting there. What was a little eerie about this whole situation is he had asked for my full name to find my Facebook profile, and I gave it to him. He then stated and asked me if I lived in this house and sent me a photo from Google Maps of my house. I guess he was able to find me because I live in a small town and he had my full name. It left me a bit unnerved, but he started commenting on how beautiful my home was and he admired it. As we chatted and exchanged likes and dislikes, he was apparently going through my Facebook albums as he questioned me about a photo of myself with, quote, another man. I told Barry that was my husband who had passed away, and the pictures were taken on vacation. The photo was actually of my husband and I in Kenya, where we had gone for a trip a few years before his passing. We love to travel. Barry's response was a bit unusual, and honestly, it shocked me. He said he didn't understand why I would have that photo up, and said I obviously am not over his death, and if I was, I would delete the pictures. He then asked me why we went to Africa and asked where else in Africa I had been. I told him that his comment was disgusting and I would always keep my husband's photos, and then asked him if he was so heartless that he doesn't remember his wife. I told him my husband and I traveled all over the world, and at one time we'd been to many places in Africa. He had asked if I'd ever been to Ghana, to which I said no. We ended our chat for a few days. I told him I had to go and didn't appreciate his comment. I stayed off Google Hangouts and Facebook for a few days. He flooded my messenger with roses, links to romantic songs, saying he was sorry and he was very stressed over his upcoming job. I told him if it's so stressful, then don't go. Have your company replace you with someone else. He said he had no choice. He had to go. If he didn't finish his contract, he wouldn't get his retirement bonus, which was what he was going to use to live on for the rest of his life. He had these big plans to buy a house, but wanted to meet the right woman first and then move to her state. He said he was interested in my state, and I laughed, saying people don't move to Vermont to retire. They move to Arizona or somewhere warm. He didn't get the joke. We continued talking as I accepted his apology, and we kept chatting on Hangouts. He tried to video call me once, but his side had no camera on. I waved a few times and then ended the video call because he wouldn't show himself. He said his phone was having sound and video issues. His story to me was that he was born in Malta, and he went to a special private school in Belgium before coming to the States after graduation to work in Los Angeles at a building firm for global construction. He even gave me the website to his company. It had his photo on the website along with several other people. It said they did worldwide engineering for building and global development. I thought the website was legit. We kept talking, and he wouldn't voice chat right away. Honestly, I didn't mind. I always thought at the time in my life I sounded like an old lady. And to some degree I am, but I feel younger than I sound, so I was okay with just texting. It was a way to get to know the inside of a person prior to anything else. Often we would chat late into the night, and as he got ready for his trip, I gave him some pointers on a long-haul flight to African countries. He thanked me and said he would contact me when he got to Ghana and into his accommodations. Barry did message me when he arrived at his hotel. He said he was very busy with lots of work in the following days. He also told me that he hated being in Ghana and again talked poorly of the country. I told him to look at it with an open mind and accept people for who they are. He said he couldn't wait to come home and then fly to Vermont to meet me. I admit I had feelings for him, but it wasn't madly in love. It was a feeling of love, but not as a boyfriend or lover. As I said, I already had my fairy tale, and that was gone. He sent me photos of the work site, told me the workers were lazy, and he had an argument with one worker who he said he's worried about as he looks very mean and crazy. I told him to remain calm and just do what you need to do in order to finish the job. Think of happy things like us meeting for dinner. He told me I was his savior, and he made my life and his life so much better that we met each other. He said after his wife died, he was sad and alone, and he was now falling for me. I told him to slow down as I don't want marriage. He brought that up several times in our conversations, and I let him know where I stood, but I do admit I had growing feelings for him. As time went on, he kept me informed about work. One late night, he poured his heart out in a text to me. His words were genuine, or so I thought, and very loving. I think he caught me at a low point. I had been missing my husband and depressed. It's strange when winter sets in. Dark and cold gives you time inside the house to think. Since I retired early, I had more time than I wanted, and my kids and grandkids were busy with their lives. So Barry was what became my life. I told him I was falling for him and his kindness. He filled a void I had in my life. We continued our conversations. One night he didn't show up on Google Hangouts, and I just figured he was busy working during the daytime there, but then 2 days went by with no word for him. I just figured he was busy working the daytime there, but 2 days went by with no word from him. I became concerned and tried to reach him in all ways that I knew how. Finally, I got a message from him on Hangouts telling me he had been robbed at the job site and that the crazy worker he was worried about went after him. He was in the hospital in a small village in Ghana. He said the worker told police that Barry had taken his wages and retaliated against him. Barry said the man took machine parts and sold them. When Barry confronted him, the man went crazy. Barry said he had a concussion and his company is demanding the machine parts be replaced, and also the hospital is demanding payment. He said he lost his passport, his work documents, briefcase, and money of about $8,000. He said the hospital wants $1,500 for medical treatment and his company is going to cancel his contract and leave him stranded if he doesn't pay for the stolen parts, which totaled $25,000. I told him to explain to your bosses what happened. Surely they will understand and help you. He said his boss made threats to him and blocked all calls from him. He asked me to reach out to him via the company website. I emailed the boss and got a reply stating Barry was being let go for misconduct and he is responsible for the stolen $25,000 or they'll terminate him, the contract, and his retirement bonus, which was set to be $1.6 million. The boss says that he needs that money to replace the parts now. I told Barry what the boss said and Barry said he didn't know what to do. He was confused, scared. I told him to reach out to the embassy and explain everything. I even offered to do it, but he said no, that he can't afford to lose his retirement bonus. Barry then asked me if I would loan him $25,000 plus $1,500 for the hospital and machine parts. He then poured his heart out to me, telling him I'm the only woman besides his dearly departed wife who's made him smile. He couldn't wait to see me, and he would pay me back out of his retirement bonus. I don't know if it was the depression, missing my husband, but I didn't want to lose Barry. I didn't want him to lose his retirement. I think a part of me wanted a life with him and knew we could have it, but we'd lose it all if we didn't get help. I asked him how I could pay the company, as a loan. I even made him write a promise note to pay the money back. Barry told me the hospital doctor would contact me via email with a medical invoice, which shortly after we talked, I got an email from the Wu Ghana Hospital asking for $1,500 to be paid to the hospital director. It could be paid via Zelle or a money transfer. I had the full name and the town. I told Barry his health is important first, so I put the transfer through in my debit card and sent the money with a confirmation bank-to-wire transfer service. Barry then begged me for $25,000 loan for his company. I hesitated, but then knew I wanted this man in my life. I thought of a retirement together. He could buy a home here and we could also travel the world. I thought about my husband and how we would travel and thought I could relive those moments with Barry. I told Barry I would loan him the money and he thanked me over and over and told me to email his boss and tell him I would pay for the parts as a loan. His boss responded to the email, and again the email was from the company, not from Gmail or any other free mail service. It was direct from the website, so I never questioned it. He said I would have to transfer the money via bank to Bank of America account, which was an engineering and construction account located in Atlanta, Georgia. I ended up going to my bank first thing Monday and doing the transfer. Barry's boss told me when they ask for what it's for, just say home renovation supplies. Otherwise, they might hold everything up, and they need these machine parts. So I did just that, pulling out of my husband's retirement savings he had set up for me, and part of the savings and part of his life insurance policy I had in an account. I did the transfer, which took a few days because of the amount. I had to declare it as it was over $10,000. Barry was upset at this, but then said, "Don't worry." Barry then asked me if I could buy him a $500 iTunes gift card so he could keep his phone going until he got home. At this point I was in deep and ended up getting him the card so we can stay in touch. I didn't know what iTunes did. After that, he then said he would board his flight in 5 days' time after the doctor released him. He had plans to fly here to fully recover. I set up my spare room with clean bedding and pillows just so he would be comfortable. He said he would fly from Ghana to New York, then to me in Vermont. The last thing I ever said to him was I couldn't wait for us to try a life together. He told me I was again his savior, and then everything went silent. I stopped hearing from him, and I tried to reach him via Hangouts, TikTok, even emailing his boss. The company website vanished after a few days, and I never saw him online again. I reached out to the U.S. Embassy in Ghana and explained the situation. They had no record of this company being here or doing any kind of work in the town of Wu, and the man I spoke to even put me through to an embassy closer to Wu, Ghana, and they had no person or information in their registry of that company. I started feeling sick. I contacted my bank about the situation to try and put a stop payment, but the transfer had already gone through. I knew then something was wrong, and I never told my family what happened, and to this day they have no idea, and they never will. Since that day, I've changed my TikTok handle, Facebook profile picture, and I've also deleted Hangouts from my phone. But now I'm flooded with men sending me Facebook friend requests, which is something I'd never gotten before this. I know I was taken, and I let my emotions overrule my head. I will never see that money again, and it makes me sick to think of what it was likely spent on. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I'd like to thank this lady for sharing her story. Sometimes loneliness and depression can overrule everything else. If you've encountered a scammer and you'd like to share your story, you can find us on Facebook under the page Scamming Scammers Action, or drop us an email, scammingscammers@gmail.com. We'll verify your story and narrate it into a video. Your video may help others. Thanks for listening, and until next time, be safe.